Hello, today we're going over the drafts between the top two teams of NA and EU, C9, 100 Thieves and Rogue G2. Let's see how their meta evaluation compares to what we saw in the LCK, and please note the LCK has played on patch 11.1 and 11.2 so far, and due to the lunar holiday has not played on the patch 11.3 yet. So this is not only a meta comparison, but also a peek in the potential future of LCK's metagame. Starting with 100 Thieves and C9. In the ban phase, Senna, Renekton, Camille, Hecarim, Olaf, Udyr. So, Senna, a vast difference, 68% presence and a 50% win rate to Korea's 6% and 25%. Very great difference in this pick here. Renekton and Camille, very similar for now, though the Renekton having a higher presence with 92%. Hecarim, Olaf, Udyr. Hecarim more banned than played in Korea as well, but to a much lower percentile. Olaf, Udyr, 100 presence in North Americans pick ban so far. Olaf 91 and Udyr only 40% for Korea, so the value on the deer here is very different. I would assume a simpler pick like him is just more in North American style, but a bit more on that later on. Rel first pick, so a very high priority here. Rel being elected in the LCK, not as often, but still very frequent. She is never first picked though, often paired up with Samira like we will see here as well, but she is often as many supports picked in the second half or kept as a last pick. Kai'Sa Taliyah, Kai'Sa around the world high priority, in NA 100% presence, in Korea around 95%, so not a vast difference. The Taliyah pick, very strange. Taliyah a low priority here in NA, so yeah, Taliyah a very or rather difficult champ, and the win rate in NA shows that 36%, so yeah, hard champ, especially in comparison to the Udyr, who is valued very highly, so she is valued less, and the presence difference from NA to Korea also varies differently. To the 98% of Korea comes the 68% of North America. Gragas, Samira, these two having similar priority in both regions. Samira a bit less due to some misfortune games and the overall low number of games in NA, but seen quite frequently both of them. Aatrox, so a 0% win rate in the LCS, only 12 games in the LCK. Into the Gragas, it's not a great matchup, that's on the side note, not the main focus though. Maybe they assume Gragas to be something else here, and Gragas has not been played as a support in the LCS, so the flex is also non-existent. Aatrox, not a really high valued pick in all regions here. Coming to the next ban phase, Alistar Pantheon being valued very similar in both regions with around 70% in presence. Graves Nocturne, a bit more interesting. Graves not really picked up all that often in the LCK, more so at the beginning of the split. Nocturne, well, he was banned twice and lost once. That's the same record in both regions regarding him. Coming to the next pick phase, we see the set prio in LCK is not as high with 35%, but the LCS doesn't really like him too much as well, with only 3 appearances. Set only played once in mid lane here, while in the LCK, Set is not only flexed into the top lane, he's just seen a bit more play in the mid lane as well. The next rotation, Rek'Sai Zoe. Obviously Rek'Sai not a staple pick for Blather or the LCS, and as the caster said, only 6 global showings, so it's a bit more random of a pick here with the 7 jungle bans prior to this. Zoe having a bit of a lower presence in NA, but in my opinion that is more due to the more supportive and scaling picks that the teams draft around, like Orianna, Seraphine and Yasir, and having a little bit less priority in Korea in comparison. Lastly, rounding up the first draft, the Galio, very similar overall in presence. Also, both regions are not doing too much winning with him, having negative win rates respectively. That rounds up the first draft of the C9 versus 100 Thieves game. I'm not going over the details of what the draft entails, because it's more focused on the meta and the picks in general. Just short, my opinion would be that C9 has the edge here in the earlier game, and they have the means to snowball that quite effectively, which they absolutely should. Coming to the second game, LEC Rogue versus G2, starting with the ban phase, Senna, Thresh, Ryze. Already mentioned the Senna is not so valued in Korea, and the Thresh for a team like T1 has very much value, for the others not so much. Very high presence, but overall only 40% in Korea. In the LCS, nearly 90%, which is a huge difference. The Ryze 2, 100% win rate, just 18% presence, still noteworthy. LCK has only seen him once, while that also was a win. That too is quite the divide here. The other 3 bans, Kai'Sa, Udyr, TF. Kai'Sa priority, again high everywhere. Udyr's low priority, more similar to the LCK, but here he is banned more often than he's picked. TF, similar to Thresh, highly valued here, 98% presence and 83% win rate to Korea's 42 and 27% win rate. LEC already showing something new and different to Korea. Starting with the first pick here, Lilia, similar presence, but in the LCK she's not first picked, and her power in Europe is mostly due to her ability, or to the overall ability of the players, to read the items and, well, pay attention as they play Moonstaff or Moonstone way more, which is obviously very strong, and the LCK mainly goes for the damage builds, which are not as powerful in comparison. Rel Jhin, the next pickup here, so Rel in a similar spot in the draft comparable to Korea, and the Jhin for Reckless a bit special, but still with a higher presence and win rate in Korea. The next duo being elected are Gragas and Renekton. Gragas being valued and elected more so in Europe than Korea, but his win rate of 28% is quite terrible to say the least. Renekton, well, how strange it is that he's still, being elected so often and having a good win rate in both regions, so he's ever so popular around the world. Lastly, for the first half here, Nidalee, her presence is way higher in Korea with 49 to the 24% in Europe, but her win rate is also lower by 10% and is also negative, so she's not super big in either regions. In the ban phase, first Gnar and Volibear. Gnar, another huge difference in Korea, 91% to Europe's 29% presence, and the win rate of Europe with 12.5% is also much lower and a bit overshadowed by the still negative 43% win rate in Korea, so it's a pick of repeated failure for Korea and Europe. The Volibear, another of the million Renekton counters that exists, 6 to 16% and 50 to 60% in both areas. Europe is higher, and players like Whippo obviously leading the charge there, while Korea's Rascal, one of the more known volley players in Korea, has not played too much of him and also not done much winning with him either. Kalista, Lucian are the other 2 bans. Kalista, valued a bit more in Europe, but similar to Korea, is banned way more often than played, and Lucian, similar, a presence higher in Europe than Korea, but a win rate and ban rate are also a lot higher in Korea in comparison to that, so these 2 are also not super meta in both regions, with the Kalista often being elected for super pressure AD carries like Ruler or Teddy. Starting the next pick phase with the Quinn, only appearing twice in the LEC to Korea's 12 times, so not a highly valued pick either, but often banned versus the Renekton, while European tops seemingly can play her or not viewing her as a threat. That's maybe the reason why she's not picked or banned. The 2 games where she was picked though were wins, so there's the potential for seeing more Quinn here. Azir Vayne, the next rotation, so for the Azir here, same presence but higher win rate. I personally, again, am not really sold on the pick. For Europe it makes more sense as the games go longer and Azir can find the power to be the AP DPS threat he is known as, and for Vayne, while the presence is different by around 6%, the total games played are just 2 apart, and in terms of winning, the European Vayne does more of that. She's seen as a lane counter to Kalista, and also her dueling ability is obviously quite stronger as well. Finishing the draft with an Echo, obviously here as a counter to the Azir, so not a regular pick, and that is also indicated with the 9% presence too. In Korea he was only banned twice, which is sad to see actually, as he is a counter in quite a few mid lane mages and should see a bit more play in my opinion. So after seeing these 2 drafts, having talked about the picks and differences there, I want to mention a few picks that the different regions are picking and banning quite often and that were not really focused here in the draft. For the LCK, that would be the Orianna with 70% presence, Aphelios with 60%, and then again mentioning the outliners with the Talia 98 and the Gnar 91%. In Europe that would include Leona with the 55% presence, but don't forget the TF and Thresh are also being highly evaluated here, as I mentioned in the draft. Lastly, for NA, that would be Seraphine with 70%, similarly Azir also 70%, and Gangplank with 55%. And also again, the 3 picks I mentioned in the draft, Udyr and Olaf with 100% and Renekton with 92% are highly prioritized in these different regions, and remembering Kai'Sa being with the 95 to 100% in all of them. From this we can roughly guess the meta style and gameplay gameplay of these regions in a very brief and summarized way that would amount to Korea having faster games that don't really revolve around grouping too much, more so on the individual lane matchups and them snowballing these leads. For NA, having more fights, skirmishes and team fights, going for scaling for the later and more bruisers for the early ones, and also more simpler champions, if I may say that. Lastly, Europe, similar to NA, more fights but more skirmishes and more pick heavy, going for global plates and trading objectives, through that getting gold faster and then getting their scaling champs online faster. I hope you found the meta analysis informative and interesting. It helps us look forward to the upcoming LCK matches and what adaptations to the meta we might expect, and also for us to see the very different playstyles and reads on the game from all around the world. If you liked it, you may show it with a like, and yeah, if you have your own take on the meta of these regions, then let me know in the comments. I always look forward to these interactions. That's it for now though. Please stay safe, have a great time. Till next time, bye.